Okay, Jen, let me know if you can hear this. Jen. See if you can. Oh, you can hear me now? Okay. I don't know what happened with that. Probably some YouTube vagary. My husband, Sam.
Hello.
Hello again. I don't know what happened. All I did was plug and unplug a few things, and it's back now. So I'm going to blame it on YouTube.
Hello.
Anyway, so we were getting to questions. So let's see, Jen. Let's start again with. I don't remember where we left off. Okay, from Jennifer Daniels again. Oh, that's right. I was talking about Souljacker and Lilybound. Yeah, I had a lot of problems with the publisher. Um, they were a hybrid publisher. And honestly, I don't know how many books were selling. They never told me, and they're supposed to. A lot of authors have had a lot of problems with them. People weren't, or at least it is speculated, highly speculated, that people were not receiving money, that they were not telling us how many books sold so they wouldn't have to pay us our royalties. Um, I wasn't receiving statements that I should be. I finally got the book back and I put it out again. But right now, my schedule was already set. I wanted to release it again so people could have access to it. But the schedule is set throughout next year. And the number of books that sold for Lilybound were not a great deal. So I don't know if people actually have already bought the book. I don't know if they just weren't interested in it. Eventually, I'll put out at least one, maybe two more, and we'll see how it goes. But right now, I want to keep on schedule with what I've got planned for next year. So it's in the offing. It's in the future. I haven't shelved it at this point, but I can only write so fast, and I already have my schedule pretty much planned for next year. So long way around of saying, yes, I do have plans for more, but right now I can't give you a time frame. What's my favorite tattoo and do I want more? Oh, God, yes, I want more. I've got about 100 hours in the chair at this point. As to my favorite, I'd say probably, in a sense, my first one, which, no, I'm not going to give you a peep show, but which is this one. It's panther with green boa around, mushroom, fly agate mushroom, peacock feather fan, and foxglove. And that was my first one. I got that in 1998, and then I got my boa right after that, and then I got the peacock that's down one of my legs, and then it just kept going. I'm heavily inked. I love tattoos. Every single tattoo I have has a meaning. And yeah, I've got so many more that I want. Um, I want an addition to my peacock on my leg. I want some work down in here. I'm going to get the rest of a cover up for this one because while I love the deer down here, and I love this as part of the cover up, this wolf. I didn't realize that my first tattooist had gone back to the bottle until after he did some work that wasn't so good. So, I'm getting a few cover-ups, but I love all of my tattoos. I've got a skunk, which is upside down. It's like bear, blue rose, the dragon, or the butterfly axe. That's a panther. That's old. This again was the old tattooist who kind of went back to drinking. The moon and the skull are a reminder that I will never let anyone beat me up again. And then the panther eyes. And before I go on to her next question, Laura's asking, does the body react to tattooing? Does my body? I've always been able to handle it, but I haven't had a tattoo since the MCAS started, so I don't know how I'd react now. And at some point when the flares go down, when I can calm down the flares enough, and when we're safer from the pandemic, I will give it another try with a small piece and see how that goes. Right now I wouldn't go in. I haven't gone in for the past few years because of the flares I've been in. So, and yes, April, I am back. So I don't know how I'd react now. I'm being cautious, put it that way. I mean, if I can never have another one again, I'd be disappointed, but at least I've got what I've got. Okay, second question from Jennifer Daniels. That's last question. Can you tell us of some more of your spooky, fae, or paranormal experiences? I could fill up a couple hours with them or more. So let me think on that while we're talking some more, and then I'll think of one of them to tell you. Because I've had a lot. I've been in the craft 40 years. I wouldn't be in the craft 40 years if I didn't believe in the magic, if I didn't believe in the gods, if I didn't believe that this worked, if I hadn't had experiences, I wouldn't be doing this for 40 years. So, any other questions so far? Why don't we put that one on hold for a little bit, Jen, and go on? Is there any other questions that people have? If not, okay. Ryan, what? Yeah, can't talk today. You have a question from Ryan Snyder. What did he want to know? Ryan's a good guy. He's in our Facebook group, and he's a really good guy. If what I am currently reading or watching winds up affecting my current writing project. Okay, that one is actually a good question. I do not read books in my genre while I am writing, which means I don't read a lot of urban fantasy because I don't want it to subconsciously affect my work. I read a wide variety of genres. As far as shows, now I'm watching Wheel of Time right now, and I am writing fantasy. And it's inspirational, but I don't think it wears off in my brain as much as reading does. However, I do have to say that the MCAS, and that's mast cell activation syndrome, which is a problem that I have. The MCAS is very problematic, and it's begun to affect what I can watch. I love spooky shows. I love shows like Criminal Minds. I love, Forensic Files and all those shows, all those kind of dark, spooky ones. But I've had to be very cautious on watching them anymore, especially past about 4 p.m. because if I watch them too close to bedtime, the suspense, the stress of the suspense, even though it's a show, can trigger a reaction. So that's been something that has been very hard to cope with emotionally. You know, the things that I love triggering reactions. I mean, food is one thing. It's like, okay, fine, I can't eat that. Pisses me off, but I can't eat it. So deal with it. But when it comes to media, because I love movies, I love TV, you know, I love all forms of media. And the fact that I've had to put some shows on the back burner and not be able to write them or not be able to watch them has been difficult for me. So I end up watching a lot of shows that have nothing to do with my genre. And I will say, luckily, writing the scenes that I do not affect me. I don't know why. Maybe it's because part of me knows how it's going to turn out. Part of me knows, you know, that I am creating this, and it's not something I'm sitting there going, I don't know what they're going to do with the show, this series, this movie, this whatever. Or even if I've seen it, it's like the very suspenseful movies, like my October movies. I always watch this group of movies in October, which includes some horror like Event Horizon and Room 1408. And I couldn't watch those. I couldn't watch those this year. The reactions have been too strong from stress because stress will produce a reaction. And it's also affected the video games I can play. I used to play Creativerse, and I can't do that now because it's so neon and it's so vivid and the shapes are so geometrical that it will affect my brain at night. And it was causing me to not be able to sleep and to almost be in this half asleep, half awake phase where all I could see was bright colors and shapes and stuff. And it was very, very wearing on me. Oh, that's a good question, Laura. Have I ever deliberately written a character that I disliked from the beginning? Or did I develop a dislike for a character as I was writing them? Yes and no. I mean, my villains obviously are villains, but I've always said there's a little part of me in every character. Honestly, from Otherworld, I really had problems with Delilah. She was so timid, she drove me up the wall. She was so far from who I am that she drove me up the wall. And I grew to appreciate her as she grew stronger through the series, but she was always the ones whose books were hardest to write. Um, it's like a cat. I mean, I love cats. She's my love for cats, but they can be very frustrating. Let's see. Lannon in Indigo Court. I both loved him and hated him. I mean, he was a great villain, anti-hero slash villain, but I never could quite come to terms with how creepy he could be. As far as the characters I've been writing lately, I've loved most of my characters, especially since I went indie. I really like the characters I'm writing. I can write them the way I want to write them. I can, nose is runny today. I can write them the way I want to write them. If they're a problem, then I can figure out a way to deal with them. I have so much more freedom. I think in terms of dislike from the beginning, it would have to be some of the villains. Haito in Otherworld. When I wrote the scenes with him, I had to go take a shower to wash off the slime and the sleaze. The same with the Rakshasa villain from there. And actually Crawl from the Indigo Court. I love him because he's so hideous, if that makes sense. So if that answers your question on that. And Sam is here again. Hi, sweetie. So let's see. Yeah, Crawl still creeps me out, but he was one of the best villains I wrote, I felt. He was like an insect to me. He was like this creepy insect that had a brain and absolutely no sense of conscience. And to me, that's what a villain is somebody who has no conscience about what they're doing. Hello, Kaylee. Are we doing this again? Just don't make the sound go away. I don't know if you did in the first place, but you know what? Yeah. Yeah. That's a good girl. That's a good girl. You're a good girl. So, in terms of ghostly fairy stories and stuff that I've actually experienced, well, I told this one in Embracing the Moon, but at one point, a couple friends and I went out to do a house clearing for another friend. She was having a lot of ghostly activity. She had a daycare on the site, on her premises, and the kids were seeing this creepy old guy, and they were also seeing a little boy. So we went out there. This was so many years ago, back in about 1996 or so. And first thing we discovered is she had all through her house, she had mirrors facing windows and mirrors facing doors and mirrors facing mirrors. And that's a good way to set up a portal and invite someone in. And you don't always get to choose who comes in. So the first thing we did is tell her, you got to change the position of some of these. At least put a cloth over a mirror if you can't move it. Because she had so much activity going on. And then we felt that there was this one area where a lot of energy was focusing through, and it felt like there was some sort of elemental land diva coming through there because there had been a big tree um, there before they built the house, and the tree had been taken down. And that tree, I don't know if it was on a ley line or what else, but it was very powerful. The energy was still coming through, but it was kind of scattered because it had nothing to focus through. So we set up a crystal grid in that area to focus the energy so it wouldn't just scatter. Then we went out in the daycare area that was in a different building on the property, and we started feeling out things that were there. And yeah, there was a little boy. We could feel him running around. Saw him a little bit. And there was a Native American woman there. And I think she was protecting the kids. That was the impression we got. She was protecting the children from this old geezer's ghost he was up in the attic in that building. And he really didn't like the kids, and he didn't want to leave. Now, a couple things happened that they sound like they were out of a low-budget horror film. And really, if I saw them in a movie, I'd laugh them off as being cheesy effects. But when you're in the midst of something and these things happen, they could be a little bit scary. For instance, my friend and I were standing there, and they had this door with a half window in it, like a business office door. And we glanced at the window and the door, and there was a skull reflecting in the door. And there wasn't anything behind us for it to reflect. And it was just staring at us, and it was like, okay, give us a break. This is freaky, but it's also kind of cheesy, so stop. Because we knew the old guy's ghost was doing this. And then we went into the playroom area, and there was this toy lizard. And the eyes had been painted on. And the eyes were swirling around, and it was like, oh, come on. We are not in a movie. Stop this. So we started going up toward the attic where the ghost seemed to be making his home. It was winter. It was midwinter, and these bees came swarming down the stairs, and we were like, no, we're not going up there if there's a bunch of bees up there. So first, we managed to get the little boy's ghost to move on. We created like an energy portal and just to move him over to the other side to where he needed to go. And we envisioned a puppy on the other side, and he wanted to go play with the puppy. So he actually went through and he was gone. I was like, good, he's no longer trapped. After he left, the Native American woman was getting ready to leave. We could feel her. She was like, I think she'd been protecting him as well as the living kids that came into the daycare. The old guy's ghost, we spent 3 hours getting out of there. A mixture of drums and spells and things like that. We finally pushed him out. He did not want to go. We forced him out. It was almost, we had to do like an exorcism on him. And after he left, the Native American woman left because she was no longer needed. And then we did a thorough cleansing of the property and basically told her, told our friend, you got to start doing cleansings every so often. You got to start doing, go through, clear out the energy. Don't let chaos enter around because that chaos invites unwanted visitors. So there's one of my ghostly stories. Will I be writing any more Whisper Hollow books? I have plans to, but again, I am encountering a problem in that my ex-agent kind of sold me down the river. The UK and all of its territories seem to have perpetual rights for the life of copyright to those books. I can't put out any versions in any of the UK territories, and you would be surprised by how many they own, or the UK, without getting in trouble. So I do not control all of my books. I control them in the US and a few other countries, but it's a mess. I mean, it's just a freaking mess. And I am fighting to get those rights back. And they're being assholes about it. So until I know whether or not I actually can control the entire series, it's problematic for me because then I can't promote them the way I need to or anything like that. So I would love to write more in Whisper Hollow. I have plans to, if I can ever nail down exactly what's going on. Same problems I'm having with Otherworld. The publisher owns the rights to 11 of the books. They gave me part of the first few books back, not the first 3, not the first 4 actually. They gave me books 5 through 11 back, at least in the US. I don't have them back in most of the other countries yet. And they are really holding on to the others. And I am currently talking to a lawyer about how to deal with this. So, the books that were with Trad Publishing, except for Souljacker, and except for the ones that I've gotten all the rights back to, in other words, Otherworld and Whisper Hollow, are very problematic for me at this point. And I don't know what's going to happen. It's like I can afford only so much in terms of legal fees to go after them, and then it's not guaranteed. So, yeah, it's been a mega headache. They changed the contracts midstream once I went big, and I did not see some of those changes come through. And unfortunately, that doesn't matter legally. So we'll see. We'll see what goes. The best I can do right now is kind of bring the characters into Moonshadow Bay a bit, which is one reason I hooked up those 2 series. logically, it makes sense to me. The two worlds feel like they go together. And I can bring the characters into Moonshadow Bay without a problem. But writing a Whisper Hollow book that I can only put out in the US and a couple, the US, Germany, and France, I think, is again problematic for me to be able to promote it. And I have to be able to promote these books to bring in new readers to keep being able to afford to write books for you guys. Which is why I push my indie work so hard. It's like the better it sells, the more I can write. And the more I can afford to see what I can do about the other books. I would love to have Otherworld back. Completely. I would love to have Otherworld back. But we'll see. Hi, Ryan. I just answered your question not long ago. I think, was that the Whisper Hollow one, Jen? Looking up on the chat. Oh, no. Ryan, I answered your question, I think shortly before you came in, about how things I read or watch affect me. And honestly, I will put this up for a replay. I don't read the genre that I'm writing at the moment. Watching it on TV or something is not nearly as problematic, but I do not read the genre in which I am writing at this time period. So, okay, how are we doing? Any more questions? Any more comments? No, it's not just a Berkeley thing. A lot of authors from a lot of different publishers are having problems. The more popular and the more successful indie publishing becomes, the harder the trad publishers are glomming on to what they already own, and the more problematic some of the contracts are becoming for those in trad publishing still. I would never go back, to be honest. I am so much happier and I can be so much more productive in indie. It's definitely harder. It definitely has a lot more work to it, but I am just a happier person and I'm writing what I want to write. Thank you, Rachel. I try to be engaged. It's easier for me to do things like this anymore. The Indigo Court, no, that series is finished. Even after I got it back, it is my least, no, other than Bewitching Bedlam, it is my least popular series, and it does not sell. And I just can't afford to write more of it at this point. Not just to sell, a few hundred copies here or there. But I loved the series. I'm proud of what I did with it, and I wish it had more popularity, just because I would like to write a few more, at least novellas in it. But let's see. Yeah, Jen, let's go with a few people made some assumptions, so I'm going to have Jen write those out, and I'm going to tell you how accurate they were. And April, I have always wanted to be a writer. Since I was 3 years old, I've been telling stories. I couldn't write then. I mean, physically, I was learning to read. And I remember there was one day when actually, I don't know whether someone told me or I just figured it out, but I understood that people made the books that I loved. And right then I was like, I want to grow up and make books. And that's what I've always been focused on. Okay. Maura assumes the only thing I've ever assumed about you is that when you write about places that are real in your books, you've been there. Not always. Chickasaw in Shenzhen, China it's a made-up town in an area that I've been through. And there's nothing there, or at least there wasn't when I was writing it, except grassland and foothills. It's so funny though, because speaking of that, another person I knew had a friend who told her that, yeah, I've been to Chickasaw. And this person said, no, I think Yasmine made that town up. No, I've been in Chickasaw. And it was like, well, that's better than I have because it doesn't exist. But I write fictional places within actual places. Like in Seattle, a lot of the districts I'll write about where the people live, or like the spooky districts, those don't actually exist, but I sort of fit them into the neighborhoods. And I seem to do a good job because people often think they do. And I've had people try to navigate around Seattle with my books, and they've actually done a pretty good job of it. Underground Seattle does exist, by the way. Have I always been drawn to witchcraft? When I was a kid, I was very psychic. I could hear voices. I could see things happening that hadn't happened yet. It was very frightening because I was brought up in a very pretty staunch Christian household. Um, and then my mom got into the Jehovah's Witnesses, and that was scary as hell. And then I started college early. I was 15, skipped high school, went straight into college, and I took a philosophy of religion class. And the professor was a minister, but he told us, make sure to question your beliefs, and if they don't hold up, get rid of them. If they don't hold up for you, find what does. And so I began to question whether I really was Christian, and I really wasn't. And then I went through a searching period. And then when I was 19, I had a mystical experience. And from then on, I've been in the craft. Um, if I could have one of my series made for a Netflix special, which one would you choose? This might surprise you. I would like the Chintz and China series to be on Netflix. I think it has the perfect potential for being a series. I can see it really easily. I'd be willing to let go of it for that. I think that would make a great series because look, Medium, Ghost Whisperer, even Ghosts right now. I tell you, the show Ghosts, which is on Hulu, and I think it's on CBS, I love that show. I wish I had thought of that show, to write as a series because it's so cute and it's so well done. Ryan says, Souljacker, I already own the print and funds are tight to be buying. Oh, well, I'm just grateful that people want to buy my books. I don't expect you guys to buy each version of every single book. I'm just grateful that you love my work enough to support it and don't think I ever take it for granted because, an author, to support your work, you need fans that love your books, and that I have fans that love my books, that I have readers that care enough to buy my books means the world to me. So I value you guys so much. And, I am very lucky to be able to do what I love for a living. And I'm very grateful to my destiny, to my path, that I've been able to take my talent and make a living off of it. There are a lot of wonderful authors out there who can't. Most people assume all authors are rich and famous, but honestly, most authors have to have day jobs or they are just scraping by to make a minimal living. And I'm very, very lucky in many ways. Anna Marie assumes. I assume you like peppermint mochas. Yes, I do. I miss coffee. I had to give up coffee because of the MCAS. It causes reactions in me at night. And I miss my espresso machine so bad. That is probably the thing I miss the most, besides my favorite food, which is tomatoes. I miss those two things so much. And I make myself, even though chocolate is problematic, I can handle limited amounts. So every morning I make myself a sugar-free, dairy-free peppermint hot cocoa. And that psychologically helps. It doesn't give me the buzz that peppermint mochas did, but it psychologically helps with having to lose those things. So, Dolores, yes, I think it would work either as Netflix or Lifetime, because it had to be G rated, because actually, I will tell you a little story about the Chins and China series. When I first sent it to Berkeley, well, I got my ex-agent, she was helpful back then. And when I first sent in the first book, Ghost of a Chance, it was not a cozy. It was a lot more hardcore. It was a lot grittier, and there were some things in there that no cozy reader would have stood for. But Berkeley wanted it to be a cozy series, and they asked me if I could change it and take out all those parts that I had added in and take out some of the paranormal stuff and turn it into a cozy series. I wanted in. And right back then, there weren't any self-publishing options like there are today. There was Vanity Press, and there was the very beginning of self-publishing, but I think it was mainly erotica at that point. But Vanity Press was a scam, and it ripped off so many authors, including someone I knew way back then. We're talking like the early 2000s, who had been ripped off for $8,000 by a Vanity Press. And he was too embarrassed to go after them in the class action lawsuit. But to get in, it was either make those choices or don't get the contract. I made the changes. I made the choice to change it to a cozy series. So, yeah, I took out a lot that was very gritty and a lot darker. So, it would work for Lifetime and for Netflix. Those are probably the lightest books I've ever written. And, well, also the Bath and Body series. Very short-lived, ill-fated series that I wrote to prove that I was cooperative, because they offered me the series on a silver platter, basically small advances, but it meant I would cement myself more with the publisher if I wrote it. They said, we would like a series set in a bath and body shop, and it cannot be paranormal, and we would like you to write it, and you can use your own characters, whatever, but those are the framework. That's the framework we wanted in. So I was like, I can do it. And they gave me 3 books, and I realized halfway through the first one, I don't write non-paranormal stuff very well. I mean, I did a good job, but I did not enjoy it. It was a struggle to get through those 3 books. So that's a little bit more about publishing. You don't always get a say in what you want to write if you want to position yourself with the publisher. But yeah, Chins and China series I'm fond of. I don't think I can ever write more of it. It's not me anymore. But I liked the series, and I liked Emerald, and I liked her kids, and I'm not a kid person, and I even liked her kids. So, any more comments? Any more questions? Jen, do we have anything else? Oh, later today, I'm going to go play Valheim with some friends. So I got my other assistant, Andrea, hooked on it. Well, actually, I got her hooked on games. She got hooked on Valheim. She got me hooked on Valheim. How did I find my spiritual path? I had a very mystical experience. I'd been searching. I knew that Christianity wasn't my path. I knew I wasn't an atheist. I knew I wasn't even an agnostic. Didn't know what I was. Um, I'll tell you the story. One night, while I was at Evergreen State College, where I went to college, and I was barely 19. I just turned 19 the month before. I was out walking one night, and it was a full moon, and it was a super moon. I actually looked back to find out, and it was on leap year day that night. So it was February 29th, and I was out walking late at night all around the campus. It was cold, but it was beautiful. And I walked into the soccer field, and the campus was that campus was about 1,000 acres. It was highly wooded at the time. So I walked out in the middle of the soccer field, and I was looking up at the moon. And I didn't know much about witchcraft. I didn't know much about the craft. I didn't know about goddess worship. It's like I didn't really have any assumptions about it, but I hadn't really heard of it much either. And so I was there, and I was looking up at the moon, and all of a sudden, all the noises around me stopped. The frogs that were croaking stopped croaking. I stopped hearing the traffic. It was like I had entered a cone of silence bubble. And the next moment I heard, I don't know whether it was audio. I don't know whether it was outside or just in my head. I heard a woman, and she said, "Do you know who I am?" And I don't know how this came out. I don't know where it came from, but gut wise, I knew. And I just said, "You're the goddess. You're the earth goddess." And then I heard her say, "Do you know who you are?" And right then it was just like, I'm a witch. I've always been a witch. I'll always be a witch. And then she said, "Are you ready to come home to me?" And I realized that my answer would determine the rest of my life in terms of spiritual path. Either way, it was crossroads, which is one reason I write about crossroads so much in my work. And I was standing at the center, and I could say no, and I knew that would end it forever. That would end that possibility. Or I could say yes, and I said yes. It was like that felt right. So I said yes, and then the next thing she said was, "Find your way back to me." And then everything started up again. I heard the frogs, I heard the traffic, I heard everything start up again. And I was standing there realizing that everything had changed. And yet almost nothing had changed, if that makes any sense. And so I started doing what research I could. There weren't many books back out at that time. There weren't many practicing pagans at that time that were very vocal. And this was like 1980. And so I had to do a lot of experimentation. And most of the path that I write about in Embracing the Moon is from my own experimentation. I didn't go based on what other people said to do. I followed my gut, and I followed my intuition. It looks like we got some Russian trolls in here. And yes, it was an amazing experience, and I will never forget it. It formed who I am today, or it helped form. Everything I've been through has helped form who I am today. From the, abusive childhood to the abusive first marriage to living in a bus to my spiritual path. everything I've been through has made me who I am today. And while I would rather some of those things had not happened, they have given me strength, and they have given me a determination. And that's why I try to encourage other people. That's why I talk about the bad experiences in my life, is to let people know that you can overcome them, that you can get through them. That I wasn't a famous author back then. I wasn't I didn't have much. I was poor. I was, at one point I was homeless, and I did manage to make it through those experiences and to come out ahead. Who's my favorite cat from Tiny Kittens? Grandpa Mason. I miss Grandpa Mason. I loved Grandpa Mason. I cried when he passed over. Even though he had a lovely life there, I still sat there and cried. When and where and how did I meet Sam? And yes, Sam is pagan. He wasn't when I first met him, but he was pagan friendly. I was living in a bus, and I was living on the back end of 5 acres. A group of people were up in the main house in front, and I was on the back end in my bus, and we were all squatting. And then the corporation who owned the land found out we were there and kicked us off, so I had to move. So a friend of mine named Rich said, "You can move in with me. My roommate won't mind." And I was like, I'd met his roommate once, and I was like, "I don't think your roommate likes me." And he was like, No, it'll be okay." So I move in, and I'm sleeping in the living room because I was going to sleep in Rich's room, except that his room was a mess and he had to clean it up before I could get in there. So I was sleeping in the living room, and then I noticed that this roommate of his kept watching me and kept looking at me, and it was odd, but there was this pull. And then one night I decided, I don't know if he's interested in me or if he just doesn't like me or what. So I go fortify myself at my friend's house with some Captain Morgan, which I loved. And I came back, and I was sitting there reading through the poetry that I had written. And his roommate, who was practicing his drums, looked over and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm looking through my poetry." Well, he stopped practicing the drums, and he walks over and he goes, "Read me one." Well, I was just like, I don't know what to read. And I had my poems numbered, so I said, "Give me a number." And he gave me a number, and I flipped to that page and started reading, and promptly realized it was an erotic poem. And at that point, I couldn't stop because it would be weird to explain why I was stopping. It would be weirder to explain why I had stopped than just to read through it. And so I finished that, and he says, "Read me another." So I read him another poem, and then he said, "Stop." And then we're sitting there in this tense silence, and he's laying on the floor with his hands over his eyes, from what I remember. And I say, "What are you thinking?" And then out of the blue, he just looks at me and goes, I'm wondering if you're interested in having a relationship with me." And I'm just like, because I thought he was going to ask me to sleep with him, and I would have. But I did not expect that. And I did not expect myself to suddenly go, "Yes." And I moved into his room that night, and we've been together ever since. We've been together 29 years now. So that's how we met. And he proposed 2 months later, and we got married the next year on Beltane. Oh, you are such an inspiration. Okay, well, thank you, April. And shadow work can be very scary, but I think it's necessary to balance yourself out. When did I get my first cat? I had my first cat when I was born. We already had a cat. I had cats all the time I was little. We had dogs too. Um, I've been about 2 years at a time when I didn't have a cat, and that's when I was living in the dorms. And I even had cats in an apartment that I wasn't supposed to have cats in. So I've had cats all my life. And my very first cat was named Tiger. And we had a dog named Butch. And I think he was like an Irish setter golden retriever mix or something like that. And we had Tiger the cat, who was Tabby. And we had a duck named Donna. And they used to sleep together. Dog would sleep in the middle, duck would sleep on one side, cat would sleep on the other. And I hated that duck. That duck was mean as, oh, hi, Casper. Haven't talked to you in a long time. That duck was really mean, freaking mean. She used to pull. She'd, I was very, very tiny at that point, and she used to reach over my head, grab hold of my ponytail, and pull. And she also nipped my heels. And she would grab my plastic pants off, and the dog would grab my diaper off, and I'd be running around the yard naked until neighbor called my mom. How do I feel? What do I think about Satanists? You know, most Satanists that I've known are more humanists. They're more just leave me alone and let me do what I want, sort of like libertarians. I actually put, if they're actual Satanists, I consider them part of the Christian mythos because Satan does not exist in the pagan mythos. So to me, if you are an actual Satanist who worships Satan, you are part of the Christian religion, just on the opposite side. So I really have nothing to do with either one. So I don't think a whole lot about them, actually. The temple of oh God, trying to remember what it is. Mostly the official Satanist organization tends to be about keeping people's rights for themselves, especially like women's reproductive rights, things like that. I personally don't know enough about their belief system to comment. So, oh, let's see. Yes, Sam is very wonderful, and he does a wonderful job supporting me. What is my favorite supernatural mythical creature? That's a good one. Kind of changes a little bit. Oh, the Satanic Temple are not true to Satanists. I kind of believe that too. My favorite supernatural creature depends on the day. Black unicorns. Um, I have a really strong interest in the Lan and Shi right now. They, part of Ember's bloodline, and the new character in the Night Queen series, who will be Ember's first acolyte, first priestess, is also Lan and Shi. I'll tell you that right now. I'm fascinated by some of the darker Celtic fairy folk. I'm not much into shifters, which is why I don't write a lot of shifter main characters. I mean, I'm fascinated by them, but my shifters always shift into the actual animal, not like the werewolves, which I consider something totally different. Oh. Ryan, are you talking about the duck stealing my diapers or what? April, yeah. The Wild Hunt series is actually, I think, my favorite series that I've written. And I am having so much fun starting the spin-off. The Poisoned Forest, I will tell you right now, it's so much fun to be writing fantasy. I mean, not just urban fantasy, but fantasy, and a dragon character to start with. But the hedge dragons are not like the dragoni, so they get knocked down a whole lot, and they're hunted a lot for their skins because they aren't immortal like the dragoni in the Wild Hunt series. And I won't say too much more because I don't want to spoil that or the rest of the Wild Hunt series for someone like April. But yeah. Right, Jen. When I have werewolves or actual lycanthropes from mythology in my books, they tend to be mutations or part of a illness gone wrong. Another mythological creature I always loved, and I don't think it's mythological, it's from movies, is the Blob. That just came to mind. I love the concept of the Blob, and it reminds me of The Thing from John Carpenter's movie The Thing, which absorbs creatures and absorbs them and takes on their persona. The Thing is actually the remake of it, not the old thing that looked like a carrot running around from the 50s, although that was a fun movie. But The Thing has always fascinated me. It's one of my favorite horror movies. Actually, I think it's so well done, and the prequel they made to it was excellent. I am going to have to go soon, so any last questions? Because I've got some things to do before I get ready for my Valheim game. Yay. I keep running into the Black Forest accidentally and barely escaping with the skin of my teeth. By the way, Valheim, if you're into Norse mythology, is wonderful. It's actually great. Yeah, Jen, it reminds me of a gelatinous, or like an ochre jelly. Reminds me of an ochre jelly. I'm an old D&D player. I played D&D for years. I ran dungeons for a decade. I would still be doing that if I had more time. I love old school D&D. Only I always kind of made up my own. You know, it's like my characters were not, the characters and the creatures I created were not quite standard to the AD&D stuff. Well, thank you guys for coming. Glenda, thank you. And thank you all for being here. And I hopefully will be doing more live streams in the future. I was thinking of doing another one in a few weeks, toward the end of the year. And, you know, I enjoy talking to you guys. And as I said, this is actually an easier venue for me than Facebook or anything else. I prefer YouTube by far. And I do have a YouTube community that you can comment in that I'm trying to get moving. Hi, Jen Daniels. I'm sorry, but I will be having another one in a few weeks, I think. Hey, Carol. That woman right there, Carol Shannon, she's my BFF. And yeah, you know, I enjoyed talking. I hope that you guys have a lovely weekend. Well, rest of the weekend, rest of today. And that your week is easy on you and pleasant. And stay safe out there. Stay masked up. You know, people like me depend on people like you to mask up and stuff because, yeah, super high risk, high immunocompromised here. So I guess that's about it, and I'm glad you hung out. Thank you, Jen, for being the moderator again. And sweetie, thank you for coming in. Love you. And talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.